In case you missed it, Tekken 8 announced the final DLC character for Season 1, Clive Rosfield from Final Fantasy 16. This surprise pick has everybody divided. Some people are super excited, some people are super upset. My goal isn't to cover the controversy. If you want to know my position, I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't think he's going to replace Noctis, the Final Fantasy representative from Tekken 7, who I mained, but I think they're going to do a good job of bringing in new people and kind of keeping Clive loyal to his performance in Final Fantasy 16, the way the character was built. What I do want to talk about is the dev talks that Bandai Namco is putting out with Square Enix, where they basically interview the Final Fantasy developers and the Tekken developers. It's a really cool, I think, like Easter egg way of looking at the development if you're interested in the Final Fantasy series or the Tekken series. They also show some gameplay and some footage of Clive, although more to come in episodes 2 and 3. This was just episode 1. So it's a 25-minute Japanese episode. I figured I would summarize it as quickly as possible in English, since I speak English. And you can go check out the original if you like. I think it's a fun conversation. They open with just introductions. So we have Nakatsu, which is actually... So that's not him. Nakatsu... Here, let me pause. Nakatsu's right here. He's the Tekken 8 director. Real name Ikeda-san, but Nakatsu was his tag when he competed. And then here are the 3 Square Enix developers. This is Takai, the Final Fantasy 16 main director, who actually played King and Paul in Tekken 1 in the arcades. Here is Maehiro-san. He was the creative director and did the screenplay. He's actually wearing a Xiaoyu shirt. So all of these guys have a history of playing Tekken. And the guy in the middle is Suzuki-san, who did the combat for FF16. He originally designed 2D fighting games. So when he was designing Final Fantasy 16, he talks about how fighting game influences were heavy in designing the action combat of 16, which is kind of like Devil May Cry, if you're not familiar with that. And then this guy is Takahashi-san. He is, I believe, the gameplay director for Tekken 8. So 2 Bandai Namco devs. This guy, I think, is just the host. And then these are the Square Enix devs. Now, what was probably the most interesting is, in case you don't know, I'm going to share my notes. Final Fantasy 16 came out June 22nd, 2023. This collaboration began 6 months or more before that. That places it around the end of 2022. That means Clive was slated to come into the game before we even saw the first gameplay for Tekken 8, the first gameplay trailers. Ikeda-san Nakatsu was looking into collaborations, and he said he was drawn in by Clive's gaze, which was very direct and kind of a surprising way to describe it. But what he talks about is the theme of breaking free, how Clive is breaking free from his fate in FF16, and how Jin Kazama is breaking free from his heritage, from his fate in Tekken 8. He saw that link as inspiring for him, and he was really interested in the collaboration early. So we asked Yoshi P, the producer, Yoshida-san, for Final Fantasy 16 and the MMO, FF14, if they could collaborate after clearing it with Harada, of course. And Yoshi P was very excited to do this. So both parties mutually were very interested in having Clive before Tekken 8 revealed its gameplay, before Final Fantasy 16 was even released. Part of that is that Noctis had such a high usage rate and great popularity, but they also just wanted to up that collab from FF15 and Tekken 7. One interesting term or like a condition on this collaboration is they wanted the Tekken team to play Final Fantasy 16 before they would agree to include Clive in the game. So the Tekken team went to the Square Enix offices and got to try a pre-release build 6 months before FF16 came out. And the Tekken team brought an even earlier pre-beta build of Tekken 8. So the Square Enix devs got to play Tekken 8 side by side with the Tekken devs playing FF16. And this kind of collaborative moment put everybody on the same page of how Tekken was supposed to be, how Clive would be implemented, and things like that. And what was cool, again, is because of the shared fighting game philosophy, they got to communicate early on using like fighting game terminology. They were very quickly on the same page because of the shared Tekken history and fighting game history. And I thought that was a really cool little moment that they could share as developers from different genres. What else do we got? I think that covers most of the initial story of how the collaboration started. Now let's talk a bit about what they actually showed. So yeah, after sharing their background, talking about some small stories, these guys were actually at events with like Tekken 3 cabinets, and we're talking about people sidestepping and stuff early. So these guys are like legacy Tekken players who have played for a long time, and the idea of including Clive was very exciting to everybody mutually, which is great news. Let's proceed to where they show the gameplay. So this is Clive on the title screen. They talk about how even though Square Enix shared the assets, the models, and everything, they had to make some modifications to Clive's model to make him fit in the Tekken world. Mainly because, and I've complained about this before, Jin and Kazuya and most of the dudes are so buff, it's like comical, right? Like they have like steroidal proportions. What that means is for Clive, if they brought him in right as he was from 16, he looked too skinny. He looked too frail. So they talked about thickening his waist and his thighs and his legs in order to make him appear more in line with the Tekken cast. They talk about this little like fire lamp. He like casts a little fire magic in the character select screen. They were really focused on a lot of these tiny details to kind of make him interesting, not just to Final Fantasy fans, but interesting to themselves as people who enjoyed both franchises. So that's called like the Will of the Wisp, I guess. It's a little fire lamp. They don't actually mention it ever in FF16, but that's what the devs just talked about here. So they talk about his specs and stats. They also show his costumes in the character select screen. Let's see if I can find that here. Here, yeah. So they talked about designing his 2-player costume. This is his 3-player costume from the prologue of the game, the Imperial armor, and then his 4-player suit is one of the bonus costumes also in the game. So pretty faithfully ported, but again adjusted his hips and his legs to fit the Tekken universe. They bring him into Urban Square because the kind of story is that he gets isekai'd to the Tekken world. He gets like transported here. So they wanted to show like how out of place could he really be in New York. And they talk about him looking really nonchalant. They changed his idle pose because in Final Fantasy, you look at him from the rear, like the camera angle is from behind. But in fighting games, they talk about because it's a 2D side by side, you look at them from the side, there's a different perspective. You'll notice the difference in girth of his legs to match Jin Kazama. And notably, they reduced the length of his sword. So he has increased girth and reduced length. And part of the reason they reduced the length of his sword is strictly gameplay balance. Really, they show him swinging some of his moves here. They don't show a lot of stuff. That's for the next episode. But here's some of his pokes. And then when he swings the sword at full screen, you'll see that it covers a ridiculous amount of range. And this is after they decided to shorten the length of his sword. Let's see if they swing it here. We've made it considerably shorter. Yeah. So look at him swing his sword here. He's like 2 to 3 backdashes away, maybe 4 backdashes away. And the sword goes really far. Like, that is a really far move for Tekken. And they were like, yeah, this guy's going to be ridiculous. Nobody can approach him. We need to shorten his sword. So if you look at his sword, like, compared to his character, it is pretty short, especially if you play the original game. His sword is way longer. But they made all of these considerations with Tekken in mind. And I think that's pretty cool. You may notice that he has a gauge here. If you haven't played FF16, this will be a bit of a spoiler, so cover your ears for like 10 seconds. I'll wave my hands when I'm done spoiling. This is a gauge he gets near the end of the game. I don't know how they're going to implement it. In FF16, it has 5 levels of Zantetsuken. It's that judgment cut that he did in the trailer. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can check out my other reaction video for that. Yeah, 5 levels of Zantetsuken. That's upgraded, so it could be 1 to 3, or it could be 1 to 5. Not sure how it's going to develop. But they didn't say anything about the gauge. They didn't really show a lot of moves. They're saving that for episode 2. That's right. They left us with a cliffhanger in the middle of the speeches. They just said next round and gave previews. So it's going to be a 3-day release. This is day 1. And that's pretty much what they covered. The background and then a little bit of Clive stuff. So we'll see more tomorrow and the day after. And then after that, Clive will release. On this channel, we're going to do tons of Clive work. I want to take him to God of Destruction, the max rank. I don't know if he's going to be my main character, but I want to give him a super, super solid chance. Oh, sorry. Spoiler warning over. I forgot to wave. Thank you, chat. Repeating myself, I was saying I don't know if Clive's going to be my main. We'll have to see episodes 2 and 3 to see more of the gameplay, and then he'll come out on the final day. So, I want to give him a fair shot. I want to take him all the way to the max rank if possible, and then I will evaluate from there. but I don't expect him to be a Noctis replacement. I expect him to be Clive. The fact that they went through all this trouble to make them play Final Fantasy 16 before implementing Clive makes me believe he's going to be faithful to his game, just like Noctis was faithful to Final Fantasy 15. With that said, I'm trying to be as open-minded as possible. I actually was pretty against Clive coming in. I said it doesn't make sense for a weapon-heavy character to be in this game, whereas Noctis could summon his weapons, so he could fight with his fists and kicks and then summon his weapons. Clive always has his sword out. But based on the trailer so far, I'm keeping an open mind. But yeah, that's pretty much what was in the dev talk. It was a bit short. Check it out if you like. The gameplay segment is not a lot more than what I just showed. Again, just some pokes, some strings, and then lots of story time. But yeah, I'll catch you in the next 2 dev talks, and then I will see you on stream, hopefully, or on YouTube as we rank up Clive to the max rank and try to put out some kind of basic guide information about him. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a like and a comment if you made it this far. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.